Right, so when I seen this, I thought I just had to make a video because it's a big issue in more than one way. And it was an article from National Post, and the title is it immoral to have babies in the era of climate change? And Maxime Bernier basically tweeted out, linking the article. This is This is how crazy the climate change cult has become, and he's right. And number one, they're hitting at it in two ways. Both both are for political reasons. It's not because of climate change. They're hitting at it because the people who are going to read this article and take it to heart are mostly white, upper middle or middle to upper class people. They're not the poor people the poor blacks or Hispanics. They're not people from Africa or the Middle East. It's all predominantly whites, maybe some Asians, but other than that, it's overwhelmingly whites. And why the left wants to do that, and I know it sounds crazy, it's sad, but it's the case. They want it because whites, especially white men, aren't leftists, and minorities, blacks, Hispanics, people from Africa, whatever you want to say, they're overwhelmingly people on the left, socialists, liberals, all that kind of stuff, and people on the left, I mean, you prefer to be around people like you, right? Like, people hang around with people who have similar personalities to them, similar beliefs to them, similar interests to them. And that's why the left wants this kind of stuff. And that's also why they push the whole climate change hysteria, is because if you're on the left, you want the government to have as much power over the economy and everything in our daily lives as possible. And their solution to climate change is never let the free market fix climate change, because almost all the quote-unquote climate change advances that have been made through the free market. Like, it was the free market that's introduced electric cars, for example. It was the free market that invented LED light bulbs, all these kind of things. It wasn't the government. Like, the government gets millions, maybe even hundreds of millions, probably in the U.S., of dollars. I mean, scientists especially, probably even billions when you include that. They get a ton of money to do this kind of stuff, and yet what have they invented that helps quote unquote climate change, if you want to call it that? They've done nothing. It's all been the free market. So even if you believe in climate change, you think it's a huge issue, but your solution to it is let the government fix the problem, then like, you're wrong on so many levels, because the government has never fixed anything. The government has an incentive to fix the problem, but they don't, even though they claim to care about it so much. The other aspect of this is that, like I say before, and I'll keep saying it because people need to understand it, if the government actually cared about climate change, they would be concerned about reducing debts. In fact, they would be demanding that no country, no province runs a deficit, because running a deficit means increased resources in the here and now, which means increased contribution towards climate change. And if you're concerned about climate change, would you not want to reduce that? Yet they don't. In fact, they increase debts almost every time. Every leftist government, like 90% of the time, increases it. Justin Trudeau promised to balance the budget by, I think, this year, and the debt is bigger than it's ever been. So they don't care. If they care, they care about that. Like I said, the other aspect is the whole babies thing. It's the only people, like I said, that are going to take this to heart are upper or middle to upper class whites, on average. That's the only group that you're going to, I mean, maybe like 10% of another group will, yeah, but. And if you're really concerned about overpopulation, it's not whites. Whites are having like 2 kids, 1.5 to 2 kids per couple. If you're concerned about overpopulation, then you need to be talking to at least in North America, the black, the Hispanic, and the Muslim families. If you're concerned about it, but they're not concerned about it because they're not doing that. Like, I mean, they even put a picture of a white baby in this picture. So, I mean, that's clearly signaling that to subconsciously you're going to look at it and think is it immoral to have babies in the era of climate change? You see a picture of a white baby and a white mom, I assume that would be, and think, oh, it's for white people, it's not for blacks or Hispanics or any other group. And I mean, that's the other thing too of the aspect of this is that they're just signaling the anti-white racism of the modern left, in that it really is racism because, like I say, if you're on the left, you literally believe that a different set of rules applies to whites than other races. So, I mean, that's by definition racist. So, like I said, this is a huge issue in more than one aspect because you have the climate change hysteria. I mean, they're tied in together, but the climate change hysteria aspect, and you have the let's try and convince white people to have less babies aspect. And those are two huge things because if you're on the right, the only group of people who consistently vote for the right more often than not is whites, and whites only, basically. I mean, maybe Asians, I'm not sure on that one, but maybe. But the only one that you can count for is whites. And if you're on the right and you don't want to see demographics shift to the point to where a conservative or Republican government will never get elected again, then you need to be concerned about this, and you need to be having kids because although it's not a problem in the here and now, again, that's the other thing too, that the left, oh, well, climate change isn't a big issue right now, but down the road it might be. Well, not having less kids than it takes to replace your population isn't a problem right now, but it will be down the road. Like, it's such short-sightedness, double think, all this stuff that you have on the left, and they guilt people on the right, mainly whites, like I said, into believing this stuff so that they hate themselves, so that they don't have kids, all this kind of stuff. They lie about the lies of feminism. They lie to women, claiming that, oh, you don't need to have kids. Having a career is more important, even though stay-at-home moms are happier than women, or than working mothers, or not mothers, but women. So there's so many aspects of this, but like I said, the climate change cult, like exactly what Maxime Bernier calls it, which is a good name, they're getting crazier and crazier by the day because studies have shown that about a third of Canadians are climate change skeptics. A third. And that's after having it drilled into yourself thousands of times by public schools, colleges, universities, the mainstream media, that climate change is real and climate change is this huge issue that needs to be addressed. Yet still, a third of Canadians don't even believe it. And I bet you there's probably another, of that 66 that believe it, a lot of those people that are skeptical. So that's what it is. Like, how many people believe that the Earth is the center of the solar system, or the Earth is flat? Like, that's stuff that's settled science, but yet maybe 1-2% of people actually believe it, and yet they repeat it over and over that climate change is settled science, and yet a third of people disagree with them. And like I've said before, and I'll say again, if the media was biased to the point in the other way, even if they're just unbiased, like 80-90% of people wouldn't believe it. And again, climate change scientists' income is dependent upon climate change being a big issue. So people always point out, whenever you come out with a study or a survey or whatever, skeptical of climate change, oh, it's paid for by the oil companies, even though oil companies do have an incentive to shut down fossil fuels in other countries. They never talk about that, but because there's an incentive for oil company executives to make money off climate change not being an issue, simultaneously they pretend that climate change scientists' careers and incomes and cushy 6, maybe even 7-figure salaries aren't dependent upon climate change being an issue, because if it wasn't, then why would we be studying climate change and how, the effects of it? Like, we wouldn't be. So it's the exact same thing. So it's such double-speak and backwards thinking that it really bothers me. And like I said, it's more than one way, but I think I've talked enough on this issue, so I'll leave it there. If you liked the video, make sure to hit that like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more.